Is a black hole a hole? Black holes are the most mysterious and weird in the universe. The most invincible existence. It is a celestial body in the universe, like the sun and the earth. It is a limiting state of physical theory, but it was proved to be real. April 10, 2019. Astronomers announced the world's first image of a black hole. This is the legendary black hole. Orange light. It is the light radiation emitted when matter close to black holes is sucked in. Due to the height of the light path near the event horizon, the black hole is enlarged a lot. The black hole is enlarged a lot. In the 18th century, Jean Michel speculates, there is a kind of dark star in the universe. Its density and gravity are extremely powerful, and it will be so powerful that even the light cannot escape. According to the special relativity theory, the speed of light is the upper limit of the speed of all material movement information in the universe. That means the black hole swallows faster than the speed of light. Michel calculated, assumed that the sun's diameter is 500 times that of now. The density is comparable to that now, and the surface has an escape speed that exceeds the speed of light. This kind of celestial body can be formed because light cannot escape. So this kind of celestial body is invisible, but it can be based on gravitational field effect around it to observe its existence. Einstein's general theory of relativity, mass of objects, can cause the bending of space and time. The higher the density, the greater the curvature of spacetime. Through this theory, you can infer an extreme celestial body. If its density is infinite, unlimited size, the curvature of time and space will be infinitely high. This creates a black hole.